Hi, Virgo. There is a kind of love that arrives without asking permission. Not the love that builds gradually, brick by careful brick, layer by considered layer, the kind that can be traced back to a decision, a choice, a moment where someone weighed the options and selected you deliberately. That love exists. It is real and valuable, and it has its own dignity. But this is not that. This is the other kind, the kind that doesn't knock, the kind that was already inside the room before the person carrying it understood what was happening to them. The kind that announced itself not as a choice, but as a reckoning, a sudden, vertiginous awareness that something had shifted in them at a level too deep to negotiate with, too fundamental to argue away, too alive to quietly put back in the box where manageable feelings live. And the person feeling it, the person this is about, looked at what was growing in them and felt underneath the warmth something that resembled fear. Let's stay exactly here because this is rare territory and it deserves to be handled carefully. Fear is not the opposite of love. This is one of the most important things that almost no one teaches. We are given this cultural map where love is warmth and safety and arrival, where loving someone deeply is supposed to feel like coming home. And sometimes it does. Sometimes that map is accurate. But sometimes, for a certain kind of person in a certain kind of love, it feels like standing at the edge of something enormous and looking down, not because the drop is dangerous, but because the height is real, because what they feel is genuinely, structurally, life-alteringly large. And large things, even beautiful large things, produce vertigo in the bodies that hold them. The fear this person carries is not a warning signal. It is a measurement. It is their nervous system accurately reporting the actual size of what they feel for you, and you on the receiving end of this. What does that do to you? Because being loved in a way that frightens the person loving you is its own particular kind of experience. It is not simple. It is not the clean, comfortable feeling of being chosen by someone who has everything under control. It is something stranger, something that carries within it both the most profound recognition and the most destabilizing vulnerability. Because when someone loves you beyond their own composure, when you are the thing that breaks through whatever careful architecture they built to stay in control of themselves, it says something about you that no compliment has ever said. No deliberate, well-worded declaration of affection has ever said. It says, you are the thing I couldn't account for. You are the variable that broke the equation. You arrived and something in me that I thought I had finished building started over. That is not nothing. That is possibly one of the rarest things one human being can be to another. But I want to go somewhere careful now because there is a shadow in this light. There always is. Love that frightens the person feeling it does not always behave beautifully. In fact, and this is the uncomfortable truth that needs naming, it often behaves badly. Not from cruelty, not from a lack of genuine feeling, but because fear, when it lives inside love, produces a very specific kind of damage. It produces withdrawal, the sudden cooling after a moment of real closeness, the pulling back just as the walls came down, just as the connection became undeniable, just as the feeling became too real to maintain distance from. The person disappears for a while, not because they stopped feeling, but because they felt too much and had no container for it. And if you have been on the receiving end of that, if you have felt the warmth and then the sudden cold, the closeness and then the unexplained distance, the intensity and then the silence, you will know that it does not feel like being loved too much. It feels like being left. It feels like something you did, like a door that was open, and then, without explanation, was closed. And it's possible, quietly, honestly possible, that you have been sitting in the wound of that closing and calling it rejection when it was, in fact, someone else's terror wearing rejection's face. Those two things feel identical from the inside. That is the cruelty of it. Rejection and retreat look the same. When you are the one being stepped away from, they produce the same ache, the same inventory of what you said, what you did, what you were that made them go. The same quiet, corrosive conclusion. I was too much or not enough. Either way, I was the reason. But rejection is a verdict, and retreat is a reflex, and those are not. They are fundamentally, consequentially, not the same thing. A verdict says, I have seen you clearly and chosen otherwise. A reflex says, I have felt you so clearly that I frightened myself and ran before I could be changed. One closes a door, the other leaves it trembling. C'est étrange, mais j'ai l'impression que what you are actually processing right now is not simply the fact of being loved intensely. It's possible that what you're processing is what it means to be someone who produces that kind of love in another person, because that is its own reckoning, its own vertigo. To be someone who breaks through another person's composure, who reaches past their defenses without trying, who lands in them at a depth they didn't know was accessible, that requires you to hold a particular truth about yourself that may be uncomfortable. The truth that you are not ordinary to this person, that whatever you carry, whatever specific combination of qualities, presence, interior life you possess, it bypassed every careful filter they had built and arrived directly at the undefended center of them. And it's possible, this is the part worth sitting with, that you don't fully believe that even now, hearing it, something in you is already constructing the argument against it, already reaching for the qualifier, already shrinking the truth of it down to a size that feels safer to hold. Why? What is it about being truly, deeply, frighteningly significant to another person that is so difficult to receive without immediately making it smaller? This is the question worth carrying tonight. The first one, the one that asks something real of you, what would you have to accept about yourself to let it be true that someone loves you in a way that exceeds their own understanding of themselves, not as vanity, not as performance, but as a quiet, grounded, deeply private acknowledgement that you are someone to whom that can happen, that you are, in fact, that kind of person. Laisse-moi ralentir un instant, because I want to name something about the specific texture of being loved beyond someone's control. It is not always comfortable. It is not the soft, predictable warmth of being with someone who has their feelings neatly organized, reliably expressed, delivered on a schedule you can learn to read. It is more turbulent than that, more erratic in its expression, more likely to arrive as contradiction, intensity followed by silence, closeness followed by distance, declaration followed by retreat. And if you are someone who has already learned to read inconsistency as danger, who has already been educated by an earlier life in the particular pain of warmth that couldn't be trusted to stay, then this kind of love will not feel like a gift, at least not at first. It will feel like a familiar ache dressed in new clothing, and that confusion between what is new and what merely resembles what was old is possibly the most important thing to sit with right now, because not all inconsistency is the same inconsistency. Not all withdrawal is abandonment. Not all fear inside love is a sign that the love is unsafe. Sometimes it is a sign that the love is so safe that the person feeling it has run out of excuses not to feel it fully. And full feeling for someone who learned early to keep the volume low is genuinely terrifying. Even when what is being felt is entirely, completely, unconditionally good. So here you both are, two people in the gravitational field of something larger than either of you planned for. One of you frightened by the size of what they feel, and possibly If you are honest, one of you frightened by the size of what they are being felt as. Both fears are real. Both fears are, in their own way, a form of reverence, a recognition that something is happening here that matters, that has weight, that will ask things of both of you, that easier connections never would. And the second question, the darker one, the one that asks the most, are you willing to be significant to someone without immediately making yourself smaller? To make their fear more manageable? Because it's possible. And this is the pattern worth examining. That when someone loves you with a force that exceeds their composure, your first instinct is not to receive it. It is to manage it, to dim yourself slightly, to become less of whatever you are. That produced this reaction in them so that they can breathe more easily in your presence, so that the love becomes comfortable, contained, something neither of you has to be afraid of anymore. But a love made comfortable by self-erasure is no longer the love that was offered. It is a smaller thing, a safer thing, a thing that will not frighten anyone, including you, but that will also never reach the depth that was possible when you were both willing to be undone by it. The love that frightens even the person feeling it is asking something of you, not to become more, not to perform a bigger version of yourself, to justify the feeling, just to stay as exactly what you are, without apology, without the habitual softening, without the quiet negotiation that says, let me be less so you can be more comfortable. Stay as the thing that moved them. Stay as the variable that broke the equation. Stay as the person who arrived and made someone feel something so large it frightened them. Because that person, the one who produces that response simply by being exactly themselves, was always quietly, without needing anyone's permission to be it, you